I want to tell you something that most people my age are afraid to say out loud. Getting old is not what breaks your heart. Losing your freedom does. My name is Louise. I am 90 years old. I live alone in the same little white house my husband and I bought more than 50 years ago. Every morning I still make my own coffee. I still water my flowers. I still walk to the mailbox. And every single time I do one of those things, I remember the year I thought I would never do them again. Because there was a time when my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Heavy, swollen, weak, cold. The strangest part was that everyone told me it was normal. My friends said it. My neighbors said it. Even some doctors said it. You're getting older, Louise. That's just aging. Slow down. Take it easy. But I knew something wasn't right. I knew because I remembered what my body used to feel like. At 83, I could still spend an entire afternoon gardening. At 84, I could still walk through the grocery store without looking for a place to sit. At 85, I could still stand at the kitchen counter and cook a full Sunday dinner. Then something changed. It happened so gradually that I almost didn't notice it. My ankles started swelling. At first only in the evenings, then every afternoon, then almost all day. My shoes felt tighter. My socks left deep marks around my skin. By dinner time, my legs felt as if someone had filled them with wet sand. Walking became harder. Not painful exactly, just exhausting. Every step felt heavier than the one before. I remember standing in my kitchen one afternoon looking at the sink full of dishes. I wasn't sick, I wasn't injured, but my legs felt so tired that I had to sit down before washing them. That frightened me, not because of the dishes, because I knew what came next. Loss of confidence, then loss of movement, then loss of independence. I had watched it happen to people I loved. First they stopped walking long distances, then they stopped walking short distances. Then they stopped walking unless absolutely necessary. Eventually they stopped walking at all. I wasn't ready for that. Not at 86, not at 90, not ever. One evening my granddaughter Emily came to visit. She looked at my legs and immediately noticed the swelling. I tried to laugh it off. She didn't laugh. She sat beside me and asked a question nobody else had asked. Grandma, when was the last time your legs actually felt strong? Strong. I hadn't thought about that word in years. Not comfortable, not manageable. Strong. I couldn't answer. And that silence told me everything. A few days later, she drove me to an appointment. The doctor checked my heart, checked my blood pressure, checked everything that doctors normally check. Thankfully, nothing dangerous was found. But when I described the heaviness in my legs, the exhaustion, the swelling, he said something that changed my life. He said, your circulation isn't being helped by your muscles anymore. I didn't understand, so he explained it differently. He said, your leg muscles are designed to help move blood back toward your heart. Think of them as a second pump. When those muscles stop working efficiently, circulation slows down. That sentence stayed with me. A second pump. I went home and thought about it all night because nobody had ever explained it that way before. Everyone talked about age. Nobody talked about muscle activity. Everyone talked about decline. Nobody talked about function. The next week, I met a physical therapist named Daniel. He was kind, patient, and surprisingly honest. After watching me walk across a room, he said something I will never forget. Louise, your legs aren't giving up on you. I laughed. They certainly feel like they are. He smiled. No, they're waiting for instructions. Waiting for instructions. I had never heard aging described that way. Daniel explained that many older adults stop challenging their circulation system without realizing it. Less walking, more sitting, less movement, more caution. Eventually, the muscles responsible for helping blood move through the lower body become less active. The result? Heavy legs, swelling, fatigue, poor balance. Exactly what I was experiencing. Then he taught me one exercise. Just one, not 10, not 20, one. When he first showed it to me, I almost laughed. It looked too simple, too easy, certainly too easy to make any difference. I said, "That's it?" He nodded. "That's it." I remember feeling disappointed. I expected some secret, some advanced program, some expensive machine. Instead, he pointed to a chair. I sat down. He asked me to place both feet flat on the floor. Then he told me to slowly lift my heels while keeping my toes on the ground. After that, lower the heels. Then lift the toes while keeping the heels planted. Back and forth, slowly, deliberately, like a gentle rocking motion. I looked at him. "That's the exercise?" Yes, I couldn't believe it. At 90 years old, I thought I needed something dramatic. Instead, he gave me something almost embarrassingly simple. But then he explained why. Deep inside the calf is a muscle called the soleus. Most people have never heard of it. I certainly hadn't. Yet it plays an extraordinary role in circulation. Every time it contracts, it helps move blood upward against gravity. When it remains inactive for long periods, circulation becomes less efficient. And when circulation becomes less efficient, the legs often feel exactly the way mine felt. Heavy, tired, swollen. Daniel told me to perform the movement slowly for 2 minutes, 3 times a day. Morning, afternoon, evening. That's all. No equipment, no gym membership, no special clothing, no supplements. Just movement. Simple movement. I promised him I would try it. Truthfully, I wasn't expecting much. At my age, disappointment had become familiar. You learn not to expect miracles. But 3 days later, something happened. Not a miracle. Something better. Something real. I woke up and noticed my feet didn't feel as stiff. That was it. A tiny change. Most people would ignore it. I didn't. Because when you've struggled for years, even a tiny improvement feels enormous. So I kept going. 2 minutes. 3 times a day. Every day. No excuses. No skipping. No bargaining. Just consistency. And within a few weeks, I began noticing changes I couldn't ignore. The swelling wasn't disappearing completely, but it was noticeably less severe. My legs felt lighter. My balance improved. Most surprising of all, my energy started coming back. Not the energy of a 30-year-old. I wasn't expecting that, but enough energy to feel like myself again. Enough energy to enjoy my mornings. Enough energy to stop fearing every trip across the room. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. And hope is powerful medicine. Very few people talk about that. When you believe improvement is possible, something changes inside you. You stand differently. You move differently. You think differently. And your body often follows. The biggest surprise came one Saturday morning. My granddaughter visited unexpectedly. She watched me walk from the kitchen to the front porch. Then she stopped and stared. "Grandma," I turned around. "What?" She smiled. "You're walking faster." I hadn't even noticed. But she was right. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about every step. I was simply moving, and that felt incredible. The truth is, doctors can explain a lot. They understand anatomy. They understand science. They understand medicine. But sometimes what surprises them is how much improvement can happen when a person consistently gives the body exactly what it has been missing. And what my body had been missing wasn't another pill. It wasn't another diagnosis. It wasn't another warning about getting older. It was movement, purposeful movement, the kind that wakes the muscles up and reminds them they still have a job to do. What happened next shocked even me. What happened next shocked even me. Not because it happened quickly and not because it was dramatic. It shocked me because I had spent years believing that aging only moved in one direction, downward. Yet suddenly, I was experiencing something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Progress. The first real test came during a family barbecue. My grandson had invited everyone to his house on a warm Sunday afternoon. Normally, events like that made me nervous. Not because I didn't enjoy seeing my family. I loved it, but I worried about the walking, the standing, the stairs, the long periods away from my favorite chair. Older people understand this feeling. You begin planning your day around what your legs will tolerate. You calculate distances. You look for places to sit. You wonder whether anyone notices how carefully you're moving. That afternoon, I caught myself doing something unusual. I wasn't thinking about my legs. I was simply enjoying the day, laughing, talking, walking from the patio to the kitchen and back again. Hours passed before I realized something important. My legs didn't feel exhausted. That might sound insignificant to someone younger. To me, it felt revolutionary. For years, fatigue had controlled my decisions. Now it wasn't. That evening, after everyone left, I sat quietly on my porch. The sun was setting. Birds were settling into the trees. And for the first time in a very long while, I felt grateful for my body instead of frustrated with it. Not because it was perfect. It wasn't. I was still 90 years old. My knees still complained sometimes. My back still reminded me of every decade I had lived. But my body was working with me again instead of against me, and that changed everything. A few weeks later, Daniel asked me a question. "Louise, how much time do you spend sitting every day?" I laughed. "At my age? More than I should." He nodded. Then he explained something fascinating. He said the problem isn't always sitting. The problem is uninterrupted sitting. Hours and hours of stillness, muscles sleeping, circulation slowing, blood moving less efficiently through the lower body. The solution wasn't to become an athlete. The solution was to interrupt inactivity. That idea completely changed the way I looked at movement. Most people think exercise only counts if it feels difficult, if you're sweating, if you're exhausted, if you're pushing yourself. Daniel disagreed. He said something I wrote on a piece of paper and taped to my refrigerator. Movement is medicine only when it's consistent, not intense, consistent. I looked at that sentence every morning, and slowly it became part of my life. Whenever I watched television, I performed my circulation exercise during commercial breaks. Whenever I finished breakfast, I spent 2 minutes moving my ankles and calves. Whenever I talked on the phone, I stood up and walked around the room. Tiny actions, almost invisible actions, but they accumulated, and the results accumulated too. One morning, I noticed my shoes slipped on more easily. Another morning, my socks weren't leaving deep marks around my ankles. Then one day, I climbed the steps to my front porch carrying groceries and realized I wasn't breathing hard. I actually stopped and laughed. There I was, a 90-year-old woman standing on a porch talking to herself. But I couldn't help it. I felt stronger. Not young, strong. There's a difference. Youth is temporary. Strength can be built at any age. That lesson changed my relationship with growing older. For years, I believed aging meant surrender. Now I understood something different. Aging doesn't automatically take away strength. Inactivity does. And inactivity often disguises itself as caution. That's what happened to me. I became careful, then more careful, then even more careful, until eventually I was protecting myself from movement itself. The irony was heartbreaking. The very thing I was avoiding had become the thing I needed most: movement. Not reckless movement, not dangerous movement. Safe movement, intentional movement, daily movement. One afternoon, I met an old friend named Margaret for lunch. We had known each other for more than 40 years. When she saw me walking across the restaurant, she raised her eyebrows. "Louise, what have you been doing?" I smiled. "What do you mean?" "You look different." I laughed. "I still have the same wrinkles." "No," she said, "it's not that. You're moving differently." That comment stayed with me, because she was right. The biggest change wasn't visible in my ankles or my calves or even my balance. The biggest change was confidence. Confidence affects everything. When you're afraid of falling, you move differently. When you're afraid of fatigue, you move differently. When you're afraid your legs won't support you, you move differently. Fear creates hesitation. Hesitation creates weakness. Weakness creates more fear. It's a cycle, a terrible cycle. What my little exercise did was interrupt that cycle. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. Every day I gained a little trust in my body, and my body responded. That's when I began noticing something doctors rarely talk about, the connection between circulation and confidence. When blood moves better, muscles work better. When muscles work better, movement feels easier. When movement feels easier, confidence grows. When confidence grows, you move more. And when you move more, circulation improves even further. It's a beautiful cycle, the exact opposite of the one that had trapped me before. One day, Daniel asked me to try something new. He wanted me to walk for 5 minutes immediately after completing my circulation exercise. Just 5 minutes? Nothing more? I remember thinking it sounded almost too simple, but I trusted him. So I tried it. The results surprised me. The walking felt easier. My legs felt more awake, more responsive, almost as if someone had turned the lights on inside them. Daniel explained that activating the calf muscles before walking can help prepare the circulation system for movement. The difference wasn't enormous, but it was noticeable. And noticeable improvements are motivating. Motivation is important because consistency is difficult. Nobody talks about that part. There were mornings when I didn't feel like exercising, mornings when the weather was gloomy, mornings when my joints felt stiff, mornings when staying in bed sounded wonderful. But I learned something valuable. Motivation comes after action more often than before it. Most people wait until they feel motivated. I stopped waiting. I simply began. 2 minutes. That's all. Almost every time I felt better afterward. Not always, but usually. And usually is enough. A year after starting this routine, I returned for a follow-up visit. The doctor asked how I was feeling. I smiled. Better than I expected. He looked at my chart, then looked at me, then smiled back. I can see that. I wish I could tell you there was some secret hidden ingredient. There wasn't. No miracle supplement, no expensive equipment, no complicated protocol. Just a simple movement repeated consistently over time. The kind of solution most people overlook because it seems too ordinary. But ordinary things done consistently create extraordinary results. That truth applies to almost everything in life: health, friendship, faith, purpose, even happiness. The smallest actions often become the biggest transformations. And that realization led me to discover something even more powerful than the exercise itself. And that realization led me to discover something even more powerful than the exercise itself. Because the truth is, poor circulation wasn't the biggest threat to my future. Fear was. Fear had been quietly shrinking my world for years. Not all at once, not dramatically, a little at a time. First, I stopped taking longer walks. Then I stopped visiting certain places. Then I started saying no to invitations. Not because I didn't want to go, because I worried about how my legs would feel. What if I got tired? What if there wasn't a place to sit? What if I slowed everyone down? Older people rarely talk about this. But many of us begin editing our lives around our limitations. Eventually, those limitations become our identity. I nearly let that happen to me. Then something unexpected occurred. One morning, while watering the flowers beside my front porch, I realized I wasn't thinking about circulation anymore. I wasn't thinking about swelling. I wasn't thinking about fatigue. I was simply enjoying the morning. The sunshine felt warm on my face. The birds were singing. The roses needed water. And for 10 beautiful minutes, I forgot to be worried. That may sound like a small thing. It wasn't. Because when your body has troubled you for years, freedom begins the moment your attention stops being trapped inside your symptoms. I stood there holding a watering can and felt richer than I had in a long time. Not financially, emotionally, spiritually, physically. I felt present, and presence is something many people lose long before they lose mobility. That afternoon, I called my sister. She is 87, sharp as a tack, still funny, still stubborn. When I told her how much better I was feeling, she laughed and said something that made me smile. "Louise, maybe you finally stopped acting old." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my tea. But later I thought about it. What does acting old even mean? Does it mean moving carefully? No. Being careful is wise. Does it mean accepting change? No. That's part of life. I think acting old means believing improvement is impossible. The moment we decide nothing can get better, we stop looking for ways to make things better. That belief is dangerous, far more dangerous than most people realize, because the body listens to what the mind repeats. If every day you tell yourself you're weak, eventually you'll move like you're weak. If every day you tell yourself you're finished, eventually you'll stop starting things. If every day you tell yourself decline is inevitable, you'll begin cooperating with it. I know because I did exactly that for years, until a simple exercise challenged that story. Not because the movement itself was magical, because it gave me evidence. Evidence that improvement was still possible, and evidence changes everything. The first time my swelling decreased, I gained evidence. The first time I walked farther without fatigue, I gained evidence. The first time I climbed stairs without fear, I gained evidence. The first time my granddaughter noticed I was moving faster, I gained evidence. One small victory at a time. That's how confidence returns, not in giant leaps, in tiny moments. Moments that most people overlook. A year became 2 years. 2 years became 3. The exercise remained part of my life. So did the short walks afterward. Neither one took much time, but together they transformed how I felt. People often ask me what exercise I recommend for circulation. They're usually expecting something complicated, something impressive, something they haven't heard before, and they seem almost disappointed when I tell them the truth. Because the truth is wonderfully boring. The best exercise is often the one you'll actually do. Consistency beats complexity every single time. I have watched friends spend hundreds of dollars on equipment they never used. I've watched people buy supplements that sat untouched in cabinets. I've watched people create complicated plans that lasted exactly 1 week. The body doesn't reward complexity, it rewards repetition. Daniel used to say something that I still remember. The body is listening every day, not occasionally. What a beautiful thought. Every step matters, every walk matters, every movement matters. Not because one day changes everything, because thousands of days do. 3 years after starting my routine, I attended my great-granddaughter's school performance. The auditorium was crowded. Parking was far away. There were stairs. There was standing, there was walking. Years earlier, that situation would have terrified me. This time, I hardly thought about it. Halfway through the evening, I suddenly realized something. I had spent nearly 2 hours moving around without worrying about my legs. 2 hours. For someone who once planned every outing around fatigue, that felt extraordinary. On the drive home, I looked out the window and thought about all the things aging had taught me. Patience, gratitude, perspective. But perhaps the most important lesson was this: the body often responds better to kindness than punishment. For years I was angry at my legs, angry at aging, angry at the changes I couldn't control. That anger never helped. What helped was partnership, working with my body, listening to it, supporting it, encouraging it, giving it movement instead of criticism, giving it patience instead of frustration, giving it consistency instead of impossible expectations. At 90 years old, that may be the greatest health lesson I've ever learned. Your body is not your enemy. It is your lifelong companion. Treat it accordingly. Now, before I finish, I want to tell you the one thing I wish someone had told me years earlier. if your legs feel heavy, if your circulation feels sluggish, if swelling and fatigue have started stealing pieces of your life, please don't automatically assume your best days are behind you. Maybe they aren't. Maybe your body is waiting for movement. Maybe your muscles are waiting for instructions. Maybe your confidence is waiting for evidence. And maybe, just maybe, improvement is closer than you think. My name is Louise. I am 90 years old. And every morning, before breakfast, before the news, before anything else, I spend 2 minutes doing the simplest circulation exercise imaginable. Not because it's exciting, not because it's dramatic, because it works for me. Then I stand up, then I walk, then I live my day. And every step reminds me of something I once forgot. Growing older is unavoidable. Growing weaker is not always inevitable. Sometimes the smallest movement can reopen a door you thought had closed forever. And when that door opens, even a little, walk through it. Your future self will thank you for taking the first step.